Hello, hope you're having a great day. I'm talking to you at 5:10 on a Saturday evening. And yeah, today's been an awesome day. Went to boxing at 12 noon like I do every Saturday, which was a challenge, but, was awesome as the boxing classes always are. Had a real challenging workout and came out of there feeling proud that I'd been to my boxing class today. Before my boxing class, I did have a lot of thoughts of it being a little bit more challenging than usual today, just because my arms were so aching from yesterday's arm and chest session. But ultimately, that is just my mind trying to make things seem like they're going to be worse than they are. Once I got to my boxing class and I just focused on, giving it my all, it didn't matter that my arms were aching at all. I've got to be honest, I failed to get up at 7:30 this morning, ended up having a lie-in with my beautiful girlfriend Kat, and I think, that's partly down to the fact that I have been working quite hard this week. While she's been on her night shift, I've been sitting up late and, keeping my head in my MacBook, and yeah, I have been going hard with my fitness and stuff. So yeah, I think every now and again my body just needs to nick back a few hours, and yeah, when I am sort of fatigued and actually tired, my lazy mind in the morning finds it a lot easier to persuade me to go back to bed. Now, I did get up feeling like those extra hours sleep were very useful, and I definitely felt, rested. Obviously still had my aching arms and stuff, so yeah, you could say that the sleep was beneficial, but I will still always accept that, it could have been quite possible for me to get up at 7:30, and when I do get up at 7:30, no matter what, by the time I get through my morning routine, I'm feeling awake anyway. So, I won't let myself have the excuse that my body needed a few hours extra sleep. It's still, in my mind, compared to me living how I'd ideally like to, the fact that I didn't get up at 7:30 today was unacceptable, but, it is what it is. Because I didn't get up at 7:30, I didn't end up doing my full morning routine. I ended up getting up at 10:30, and I knew I had boxing at 12. So, I had time to quickly bang out a meditation, didn't have a cold shower, didn't even write my journal, to be honest. I think I need to do that at some point this evening. And yeah, obviously didn't have a workout, as I normally don't on a Saturday anyway, because boxing is so early. So yeah, it definitely was unacceptable in my eyes, and it still would have been way more beneficial for me to get up at 7:30 and go through my full morning routine this morning, albeit without a workout. And yeah, I still have a desire to get to the point where no matter what's going on in my life, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter how tired I am, I do manage to get up at 7:30 every morning, or maybe even earlier. I'd love to get to the point where I'm getting up earlier than that. But yeah, this morning I did fail, but when I done my boxing class, and as I say, I'm proud that I did do that. Now, I'm not actually sure whether I'm going to continue making these videos every day just as a vlog. They are quite repetitive, and I don't mind that they're repetitive. Reinforcing all these ideas that I'm now living by is very important to me, and it keeps me on track. So, the fact that they're repetitive, it doesn't matter. My life is very repetitive, and I know that, the few of you that tune into every single video, you find it useful to see me, going at it every day. The fact that it is repetitive doesn't, I think, detract from the value of these videos. Certainly the way they help me, and, the way they help some of you guys that, get in touch with me to let me know how they do help you. But yeah, maybe moving forward, they won't all be daily vlogs. Maybe sometimes I'll just sit down like I did when I first started these videos and just, talk about something that's on my mind, or something that I'm trying to implement into my life, or, an idea that I've learned from someone else, based around self-improvement and health and fitness and whatnot. I don't know. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think. Would you like to see the videos a little bit less repetitive, or do you find value in the fact that I am showing that I'm doing all this stuff every day, to keep myself on track? Now, part of me thinks that I don't want to switch it up because, part of me, I'm going to be honest, there's a fear there that I might end up slipping, if I don't continue to make these vlogs every day. They're certainly a lot of the time in the mornings, for instance, when my lazy mind is trying to find an excuse for me not to get up and do what I need to do. A lot of the time, one of the thoughts that's in my mind is that, oh no, I have to make the video. If I don't crack on with everything I need to do, if I don't get up, I'm going to have to, broadcast that to the world. And sometimes that is the difference, and that does help me get going. Or if I have completely flopped, that will be the thing that's in my mind that maybe gives me a kick up up the arse and makes me actually start going through my morning routine, like even if it is late. Whereas if it wasn't for me making these videos, then my lazy mind might, find it easier to just make me give up and not sort of pick myself back up again. I don't know. But then part of me thinks that, really and truly, I need to get to a point where it's not just these videos that are keeping me on track. I need to get to a point where I'm able to crack on and do everything I need to do without the reason of, that I need to make these videos. Yeah, right now I have no desire to stop making the videos, don't get me wrong. But yeah, something I've been thinking about the last few days, and, it's one of them things where it's going to be hard for me to explain, so bear with me, but it's also one of them things where, it is something I'm sort of trying to implement into my life and into the way that I'm viewing things. But it's also one of those things where you kind of have to remember to focus on, if that makes any sense. Hopefully it will make sense when I sort of start trying to explain it. Now, one example of what I'm trying to explain is, when I'm in my boxing classes, for instance, right, I'm very stubborn. So when I'm doing a round of whatever exercise they're getting us to do, whether it be like a round of body sparring, a round of shadow boxing, a round on the bag or whatever, a round of the more aerobic type stuff, or, when we're running around the outside and he's getting us to do various things, normally doing things in rounds. And then, every now and again, it'll say, right, okay, go and grab a drink, you've got 30 seconds. And then it's when I stop like exerting myself, that's when I'm then like feeling like I'm dying, breathing heavy, like, really sort of in distress. I start pulling faces, like, sometimes, if it's been a particularly hard round of body sparring or whatever, I'm laying on the floor, like literally like I've just been knocked out, like dead. You know what I mean? And, it's the same as when you're like doing reps in a gym or whatever. You'll get to the point where you're, like straining in your face. And so, yeah, a lot of the time when we're doing things in the boxing classes, for instance, you're sort of okay, you're running on adrenaline, and then afterwards, that's when you're dying and you're literally like, trying to fight for your breath, etc., etc. And you're like in distress, right? And I mentioned recently that, a couple of times I've just sort of found myself standing in the corner and kind of going into like a meditative state, not necessarily focusing on my breathing like I would do when I'm meditating, because, in those times at the end of a round in a boxing class, I'm breathing really heavy. So focusing on that isn't going to make me feel better. But it's like focusing beyond that, focusing on the inner body, like trying to get that kind of tingling feeling that you get when you do get into a really present state when you're meditating. And, for that couple of seconds that I'm able to sort of focus on the inner body, I'm then not focusing on my heavy breathing, and I'm not focusing on the distress I'm causing myself by focusing on, how much I feel like I'm dying. I'm not focusing on the story that my mind's saying, like, oh, this is too much. Oh my God, I'm knackered. Oh my God, I need to rest, like, etc., etc. So, sort of going deeper than, the fact that you're breathing heavy, the fact that you're tired, etc., etc., sort of takes you away from that. And then, it kind of makes it a bit better. And then, naturally, eventually you get your breath back anyway. And it's just taking yourself out of the sort of suffering that you're causing yourself by focusing on the suffering that your body is experiencing because you've just exerted yourself. Like, I hope that makes sense. So based around that same idea, right? So for instance, if he gets us to like hold a plank position or whatever for 2 minutes, right? Now you'll get to the point where, you're sort of straining and you're trying to hold it. And, eventually you'll get to the point where you just can't hold it anymore and you'll drop to the ground, right? Now, it might take hours for some people, for some people it might take 30 seconds, but everyone eventually will get to the point where you just can't hold that plank any longer. Or, if you're doing push-ups or whatever, like no matter how fit you are, there's a limit you'll get to when you just can't bang out anymore. But before you get to that limit, you'll get to the point where, you might be like really straining, making funny noises, like you might be making like a funny face, so you'll get to that and then you'll still like carry on exerting yourself. And then eventually you'll reach like ultimate failure. And what I've been trying to do recently, like, is, for instance, if I'm banging out push-ups in boxing, I'll get to that point where I start pulling faces, I start going, and then in that moment, I just sort of say to myself, no, don't. Carry on, don't put on this face, don't make the noise, just carry on banging out the push-ups. Like, being sort of stubbornly sort of comfortable, like in that moment. Like, so you're kind of pushing back the point in which you do get to the point where you just can't resist going and pulling a face, right? Now, my theory is that if you're delaying that, you're also delaying the point in which you reach ultimate failure and you can't go on. When you start, grunting and making funny noises and making funny faces, that is the beginning of you reaching ultimate failure, right? So if you can, just in that moment, and again, it's something you have to sort of remember to do in the moment, right? In that moment, just be like, no, like, and just, be stoic with it. You know what I mean? Just like defy the urge to focus on how much it's hurting and instead put that energy into carrying on doing what you need to do. I believe that means that you'll then end up being able to do more push-ups, or if you're holding a plank, right, you might get to a minute. Today he was getting us to hold a plank for 2 minutes, and he was walking around like giving us motivation. He was like, it's all in the mind, keep going, don't give up. And then I found myself getting to the point where you might say, there's 15 seconds left, and I'm like, and it's like, no, like, why do I need to grunt? Why do I need to screw my face up? That's not going to make the plank any easier, is it? I mean, it's not. If anything, you're going to be wasting energy on pulling those faces and making those noises. So in that moment, I just bring myself back to focusing on tensing my core and holding that plank. That energy that you would have been wasting on screwing your face up and making noises and internally focusing on how much it's hurting, you could be putting that focus into like being as strong as you can, doing the best you can, squeezing your core. And I find that, it didn't make the plank easier. It just meant that I wasn't focused on how hard it was, if that makes sense. And I believe that if we were sort of just planking, for as long as you could, right? Sometimes they do that at boxing where it's like literally like hold the plank, like see who goes first, and you're all stubbornly trying to be the last one. So if you was literally trying to hold the plank for as long as you can, or trying to do push-ups for as long as you can, I believe that when you get to that point where you've only got a couple of more reps left in you, and then you start screwing up your face and making noise, if you then force yourself, no, I'm not going to make noise, I'm not going to screw up my face, I'm just going to focus on the push-ups. I'm not going to focus on how hard they are and how distressing they are. I'm just going to focus on the push-ups. I believe you would then bang out, more push-ups. And, then as time goes on, you're basically making yourself into a stronger person. You're extending what you can do just because you've made a decision to delay the first stage of failure, which is, where you're sort of making noises, screwing up your face, and internally sort of, focusing on how hard it is. And then, you can sort of open that up to everything in your life, right? So whenever any hardship comes your way and you find that your mind is instantly trying to make you feel depressed about it or whatever, if you can, in that moment, just be like, no, that's not going to make things any better, is it? Yeah. And just stubbornly be stoic, be brave about it, make a point of trying to not make it a big deal. And I don't mean internally battle with making it a big deal, because the more you internally battle with yourself, you're adding fuel to the fire, and your mind will just keep going up with reasons why it should be a big deal. It's actually the opposite of that. It's like accepting it for what it is and then focusing on the part of whatever issue it is that you are able to alter. So in the example of the exercises, you're deciding to not focus on how much your arms are hurting when you get to X number of push-ups. You're choosing instead to focus on banging out as many more push-ups as you can. And the same thing, like if it's like a situation in your life, instead of you focusing on how unfair this is, how it's going to negatively affect you, how you're going to have to struggle to resolve whatever issue, you don't focus on that. You focus on, right, what do I need to do to resolve it? And focus on stubbornly not allowing yourself to get yourself out of control. So whether it be something, physical like exercise, or whether it be just dealing with situations in your life, if you keep, making a point in those moments of trying to make less of a big deal of it, then as time goes on, you're just going to become someone who's able to withstand more, whether it be, exercise, whether it be things coming your way in life, anything. And this ties into what Eckhart Tolle says, right? Things that happen to you in your life, that cause you pain. It's not the things that are causing you pain. It's your mental resistance to it that causes the pain. Most of the time, if some situation happens to you, it's not the actual situation that's causing you pain. It's your mental story about that situation that's causing you pain. Your mind will start taking you into the future and making you imagine how hard life's going to be because of said situation, or it'll make you look into the future and imagine that, you're not able to resolve the situation, or your mind will drag you back into the past and start making you remember a time when you weren't facing this situation, and start getting you to compare past better times with the time that you're in now, where you need to deal with the situation. It's all wasted mind energy that you could be putting instead into figuring out a way of solving the situation you're in the now, because the now is all you ever have. So yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it is kind of something that's hard for me to explain, and it's just something I've been trying to implement. It's just a simple way of practicing dealing with things without them becoming a big deal. You're banging out your reps in the gym and you get to the point where you want to go, and you're like, no. And then you'll get to the point where you're like, yeah. So you might have done another 3 reps, between when you was going to start grunting and pulling faces to when you eventually did. And in my opinion, my theory is that you've then probably done an extra 3 reps that you could have between you pulling those faces and grunting and you reaching failure. Now, you got to be careful, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to just put less effort in so that you don't get to the point where you feel like you need to screw up your face or make noises, right? So with the boxing and stuff, it's not a case of me not going as hard as I normally do, so that then I don't end up wanting to lay on the floor dead. It's a case of, no, when you're doing your exercise or whatever you're doing, you put as much effort as you can, you go as hard as you can. But then when I sort of stop doing whatever round that is in boxing, and then I sort of start, wanting to screw my face up or wanting to lay down, it's then that you have the thought, hang on a minute, I'm trying to not let these things be such a big deal. And then I find that they just don't seem as bad, because, I'm focusing on, no, this is all right. This is all right. And another sort of benefit in boxing, right? If you're sparring someone and you have a round, and at the end of the round, they see that you're absolutely dying, it kind of gives them a boost for the next round, doesn't it? Whereas if you come to the end of the round and they're the one that looks like they're dying, and you're not, you're sort of knackered, but you're not making a big deal of it. You're just sort of there, stubbornly sort of ready, tired, but look like you're ready. You're kind of mentally getting one up on them, aren't you? So there's another sort of added bonus in the boxing thing. But then, in general life, if you can be that kind of guy that, when things do happen to you, they look from the external like they don't affect you, then you're just going to be a more feared opponent in life, in anything. You're going to come across more assertive, you're going to come across braver, stronger, more masculine. So, just the act of doing it can make you come across as a better person, but then continually doing this sort of thing will ultimately turn you into a stronger person anyway, and then the cycle just continues. Now, one way that I was kind of trying to explain to Kat this whole thing that I'm really struggling to explain to you guys, right? Now, I've mentioned before David Goggins, right? He's probably the hardest man on the planet. He does all these ultra runs where he runs 250 miles in one go, just running for 24 hours or whatever. And he's got this theory where no matter how hard you push yourself, if you pushed yourself right to the actual limit, where you literally believe you're going to die, and then you stop. And bearing in mind, when David Goggins did his first 100-mile run, he was kind of dying, and then he was carrying on. He had blood running down his leg, and all sorts, when he got to mile 70 or whatever, because he wasn't in the shape that he is now. Anyway, so his theory is that, even if you get to the ultimate that you can handle and then tap out, you're actually only at 40% of what your body can handle. Your mind will always make you tap out before you're actually in danger, right? So he sees it at 40%, right? So this is how I was trying to explain it to Kat. So let's just say that when I go hard at a round in boxing, let's just say I get to 20% of what I can actually do, right? And I'm laying on the floor and, you know, I feel like I'm going to die. Like, you know, I'm basically like virtually unconscious, right? That's 20% of what I can handle, right? Now, let's just say, you know, through practice, I get to the point where I'm exerting myself exactly the same, but I'm not lying on the floor and I'm not feeling like I'm dying. I'm not focusing on how hard it is and not, you know, dreading the next round, right? Because that's quite possible, right? Because it's not making me any less knackered by me laying on the floor feeling like I'm going to die, right? So if I exert myself and then make a point of just not laying on the floor and just, you know, standing there with my chest out, trying to catch my breath back and just stubbornly being ready, right? That's not going to be any harder than me exerting myself exactly the same, but feeling like I'm going to die, right? So then you could say that in that moment, like I could probably go to 25% of what I can actually do, from 20 to 25%, and then be in a state where I feel like I need to lay on the floor and I feel like I'm dying, etc., 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 right? Because I've then pushed that, you know, from you know, laying on the floor, etc., etc., at 20 to 25%. So I've literally like increased the amount that I can handle, right? Just because I've decided when I'm exerting myself at 20% to not make such a big deal of it, you know. And if anything, you're going to be using less energy by not making a big deal of it, you know, by not screwing up your face, by not, you know, focusing on, you know, how hard it is. You know, if anything, that's easier than, you know, making a big deal of it and focusing on how hard it is, right? In that moment, you just feel like you're dying and you do whatever it is. It's like you're an autopilot. So it does take you to sort of, you know, consciously think, right, no, you know, catching your breath, it's fine, you know. And again, you're not battling it. You're not standing there battling like, oh, I wish it wasn't so hard. Like, you just, no, you know, I'm out of breath, but yeah, I'm ready. Rather than laying on the floor like, oh my God, it's so hard. Like, that's literally the difference. But I believe, like, if you keep practicing that, you know, in those moments, you're literally going to increase how much you can actually handle. And then, you know, you'll exert yourself more, like harder. And then you might get to the point where you feel like you need to lay on the floor and, you know, and you're panting and focusing on how much you feel like you're going to die. And then, you know, when you get to that level, you'll be like, no, it's fine. Right, I can handle this. And yeah, I believe that that is a good way of just turning yourself into a stronger person, because a lot of this is in your mind. And a lot of the time when you are going through hardship, you know, it is just your mind honing in on it and making it seem worse than it is. Because ultimately, you know, even when I exert myself to the max at boxing and I literally feel like I'm going to die, realistically, I'm miles away from death. So, you know, I can put more effort in. So, you know, me focusing on how hard it is and focusing on how much I feel like I'm like right at my limit is just going to keep me thinking that I'm at my limit. Whereas if I start practicing not focusing on the fact that I think I've just reached my limit, then I can raise what that limit is. So I've been talking about this for absolutely ages. I just hope that I've somewhat tried to explain it. It's just something that I've been trying to kind of incorporate into my life, you know, the last few days. Is something that I'm going to have to sort of remember in these moments to focus on. So, you know, don't be surprised if in future videos you see me working out at home in my living room and you see me pulling faces and whatnot. You know, it is just something, you know, it's just an idea that I wanted to share with you. But yeah, this evening, even though yesterday I did arms and chest, which should have been Thursday in the gym, and even though I've been to boxing today, on my workout plan, I've actually got arms and chest on a Saturday evening. And yeah, I intend to do it because, you know, so what? My arms are aching. You know, I'm far, far, far away from causing myself death. So I am going to bang out some sort of arms and chest workout. So we'll cut to that now. At this point, I remembered to focus on what I was talking about earlier in the video. You'll see that I've now stopped pulling the silly faces and I was able to focus on doing the bicep curls rather than focusing on how hard the bicep curls were. And because of that, I felt stronger, and I believe that this approach meant that I could bang out more reps than I would have done if I continued pulling faces and focusing on how hard it was 8 reps ago or whatever it was. Obviously, eventually you do reach ultimate failure, but I believe this approach delays ultimate failure, makes you stronger and makes you able to do more reps. Today we are having pork shoulder with teriyaki seasoning on it, with mashed potato and vegetables, obviously sprinkled with peri-peri salt. We're definitely going to have to start getting bigger plates soon, I think. Well, with it now being 10 to 1 in the morning, I'm at risk of not being able to get up again if I don't go to bed soon. But yeah, after my dinner, I dived into doing some work on my MacBook, you know, keeping myself busy. Then sat down and watched a movie with Kat for a couple of hours, and we ate some crisps and a load of biscuits. And then when she went to bed at about 11:30, I decided to dive back into doing some more work. Been working on editing the next video on the other channel, which I'd like to put out tomorrow or today, seeing as it's already nearly 1 AM. But that's going to take me actually getting up on time tomorrow and yeah, getting my head in my MacBook and getting that done. So we'll see how that goes. But right now I need to get myself ready for bed. So massive thanks to everyone who has tuned into this video. I'll be back for another one tomorrow for you guys that want to follow me on my day. Until then, as usual, feel free to say hello in the comments or get in touch through Facebook, Instagram or email. But yeah, I'll chat to you tomorrow.